Have you ever looked at the new hit anime of the moment and thought, this looks pretty great, but I just don't have time to watch a new series with a dozen or so episodes? Even one that, by all accounts, I would really like. If your answer was no, then I'm jealous of you. Because if I've learned anything over the past few years, it's that time can move really, really fast when you're keeping yourself busy with things like work, family, social commitments, and, well, you know, a dumb YouTube channel you run as a hobby. That made a lot more sense to start when you were stuck at home having scary thoughts like, maybe I should give Learning Premiere another go. If you answered yes, you're most likely a busy person with only the time or energy to keep up with a few series here or there. Consider this: anime movie originals. They seem to be coming out more and more often, and generally speaking, they pack all of the same punch as a season or two of an anime into a much shorter experience. When it comes to the anime movie subgenre, a few big names stick out beyond the works of Studio Ghibli. Last year, I talked about the supposed next Miyazaki, so now let's dive into the other director also often given that title. This is Makoto Shinkai. A few years ago, he directed one of the most critically and commercially successful anime movies ever. Your Name was a massive success, and it even beat out Star Wars at the box office in Japan. So the Star Wars guy bought the rights to remake it in live action. Oh, those always turn out well, right?
Oh shit, here we go again.
And yeah, I really like Your Name. It looks gorgeous, has a ton of energy and heart, a shocking second act plot twist, and an ending that arguably reached icon status. But unfortunately, I do have one problem with it. 3 years after Your Name released, Shinkai came out with another movie that looked really similar, but I didn't think was nearly as good.
What inspired you to build a second
Your Name?
right next door to the original?
Money!
Weathering with You is okay. It might fit into the same genre that Your Name occupies, but Your Name it is not. Unfortunately, it's just messier, and seeing such a similar feeling movie from the same director bothered me for some reason. Which, yes, I do recognize probably sounds a bit hypocritical, coming from a huge Mamoru Hosoda fan. There's an incredible amount of talent on display here, and a legacy that stretches across 20 years and 7, now 8 features. With Shinkai's new movie, Suzume, just around the corner, now feels like the right time to explore the director's career before going to see another love story starring teenagers fighting a supernatural force of some kind. Except, this time, one of them is a chair? Yeah, maybe this guy is out of ideas. His movies certainly appear to be covering a lot of the same ground, but I want to be sure that these aren't just superficial comparisons. He seems to always focus on teenagers, but plenty of anime do that while being wildly different from one another. His movies are usually love stories, but those can take on many different forms. And yeah, they all look similar, but why would you mix things up when you're making art this pretty? The only way to know for sure is to go back to the beginning. Thank you for taking this journey with me. This is the legacy of Makoto Shinkai.
She's somewhere in the sky!
You're dreaming right now, aren't you?
Clouded skies. Perhaps rain comes.
I am a resident of the land of the dead.
It's as though sadness piles up all around me.
It seems everyone saw it as a symbol of something beyond their reach.
I remember when I thought 8 years seemed like an eternity.
Here's what I knew about Makoto Shinkai criticism going into this project. And criticism might be too strong of a word to use here because, generally speaking, all of his movies have been received very well. The sort of criticism I'm talking about is of the low internet rumbling variety. Comments on YouTube videos, random one-off Reddit posts, that sort of thing. From what I can gather, someone who doesn't like Makoto Shinkai considers his movies to be melodramatic, hokey, and overly similar. Regardless of whether these statements are true, I do see them come up often. And when that happens, perception of an artist can start to shift. Much like calling someone the next Miyazaki over and over again can set some pretty high expectations. Makoto Shinkai's career starts in a very unexpected place. He began working in animation in his early 20s, but he was creating things like video game cutscenes and openings for the company Falcom, instead of starting his career somewhere more directly related to anime, like Miyazaki and Mamoru Hosoda both did at Toei Animation. Using the technology available to him at his work, Shinkai released She and Her Cat, a black and white 5-minute short about a cat falling in love with his owner that won him a few animation awards. There's not much I can say about this short that you can't experience for yourself, but it's at least worth 5 minutes of your time. It's Shinkai's follow-up to She and Her Cat that I'm actually interested in talking about. Voices of a Distant Star sets up a lot of Shinkai-isms that would become mainstays in his later films, which makes a lot of sense considering Shinkai wrote and fully animated the whole thing on his own. He even voiced the male lead in the original Japanese dub. In 25 minutes, Voices tries to do a lot. The year is 2047, and childhood friends Mikako and Noboru discuss their plans for the future while doing some classic light anime flirting. Flash forward a little bit, and Mikako, still 15, has joined a global mission to fight aliens in space, while Noboru remains on Earth because he didn't pass anime protagonist school. The two stay in touch by sending short text messages to each other, which take longer and longer to exchange as Mikako and the Defenders of Earth travel deeper and farther into space. And because of sci-fi space travel, Noboru ages while Mikako stays a teenager.
I get older, they stay the same age.
Shinkai was inspired to create Voices after drawing a sketch of a girl sitting alone in a mech with her cell phone. It's an evocative image. Who is she trying to reach? How did someone so young find themselves adrift in space? And whose message are they waiting for? Shinkai is navigating what will become a common theme throughout all of his works: love's ability to transcend real and fantastical barriers. The answers present in Voices aren't really as interesting as the questions, but like She and Her Cat, the project is an interesting first draft on what will become a 20-year meditation on the subject. Plus, the piece is an outstanding achievement in animation when you consider Shinkai made it all by himself using 2001 technology. Watching Voices provides a chance to see a lot of the same visual motifs that Shinkai will repeat throughout his career. If you've seen one or two of his movies, you probably know what I'm talking about. Expansive skies for his characters to gaze upon, train crossings they keep finding themselves halted at, and, of course, yeah, he really likes rain. Time is the real villain here, both for the characters and the audience. We don't spend enough time getting to know Mikako and Noboru, and they aren't granted the time or ability to develop their relationship further. There's simply too much else going on, what with all the mech fighting and whatnot. Is that sci-fi action backdrop really necessary to tell their story? Probably not. Shinkai's later works would excel at doing and saying a lot with a little. He's great at adding weight and tension to everyday occurrences, like empty train car rides and awkward lunches. Not so much space battles and alien encounters. Still, I wouldn't hold it against the guy. I think it's rare for an artist's first big solo project to not show its influences, and I view Voices more like a really impressive fan film, a love letter to all the anime Shinkai cites as getting him into the medium. Which is perfectly fine. Fan films can be rad as hell. I don't think Voices of a Distant Star is anywhere close to the best Shinkai has to offer, but it is an exciting preview of what's to come.
That place that even though we could see it so close we could almost touch it, we couldn't go. We wanted to see with our own eyes that unknown island, and the enormous tower that rose there.
Yeah, so I don't really like this one. The place promised in our early days is Makoto Shinkai's follow-up to Voices of a Distant Star, and is his first feature-length movie. Despite being 3 times longer, a lot of the same pacing problems found in Voices also exist here. The relationships between characters feel pretty rushed, the central mystery is somehow over and underdeveloped, and the plot is just needlessly complicated. Yeah, at its core, it's another teenage love story, but let me just read you a quick summary of everything else going on in this movie, and you tell me if it sounds like a good fit for the guy who at this time had made a short about a cat, and another short about texting your long-distance crush. The year is 1974. And the Japanese island Hokkaido is under Soviet occupation. The Soviets have started building a mysterious giant tower on the island designed by this one scientist guy who you're never gonna see in the movie. Instead, you follow his granddaughter, Sayuri, who has some sort of mysterious psychic link to the tower. Except, you don't really follow her either. Instead, you follow her 2 friends, Hiroki and Takuya, who live within eyeshot of the tower. They both have this dream to rebuild an old warplane and fly to it, and that dream, shared with Sayuri, becomes the place promised in their early days.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
The tower is some sort of transponder for parallel universes, and while that idea literally translates to endless possibilities, nothing interesting is ever really done with it here. The concept of a multiverse has been covered rather successfully in the past few years, but I guess in 2004, the best Shinkai could come up with is more towers, with little bits of graffiti? What I'm getting at is that there's just really not a lot going on here, besides one really cool visual. And to make matters worse, what I just told you about the plot gets reiterated over and over again by scientists and factory workers and scientists to factory workers, and it just goes on and on and on for most of the movie's runtime. Plus, all three leads can't help but monologue about what the tower means to them, and I just don't care. Anyway, Sayuri falls in a 3-year coma because her mind gets trapped within a parallel universe, and I fall asleep for 3 nights in a row trying to finish this movie. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We've finally entered the known for section of Makoto Shinkai's Wikipedia page, and for good reason. 5 centimeters per second is maybe even slower than A Place Promised, but there's a difference between bad pacing and slow pacing. The movie centers around sometimes protagonist Takaki at 3 different time periods in his life, and it distinguishes between each by splitting them into 3 differently named segments. In episode 1, Cherry Blossom, Takaki falls in love with Akari in elementary school, but then the two move to different areas of Tokyo and are forced apart by this change. After a year of not seeing each other, Takaki attempts an evening-long train ride to see Akari one last time before his family moves even farther away. Episode 2, Cosmonaut, changes the movie's perspective entirely, while still focusing on a now high school-aged Takaki, this time from the perspective of one of his classmates who has fallen in love with him. The girl Kane spends most of the episode trying to confess this love to him, but he is incapable of noticing or receiving it because he still has feelings for Akari, who at this point in the movie is out of his life entirely. In episode 3, Takaki is now in his 20s, and he is still pining for his long-lost friend, who maybe could have been something more if fate had allowed it. And as if things couldn't get any worse for him, he now works as a programmer.
Just a second.
I'm kidding, of course. As someone with an English degree, I can tell you, in a lot of creative ways, that at least programmers make money. Anyway, this movie is slow, and about something as inconsequential as one sad boy trying to get over the girl he liked when he was 10. We are about as far away from space battles and sci-fi towers as you can get. This movie is all about the microscopic moments in a person's day-to-day life. And if you are down for that kind of movie-watching experience, you can live in these small moments because they have been fully realized by a much more confident Shinkai and his expanding team. I'm reminded of this little moment in Spirited Away where Chihiro stops to straighten her shoes after almost forgetting to do so. It's a real human moment in a world brought to life by pen, paper, and keyboard. When I first saw this movie, I remember thinking, who would stop to animate that? Watching 5 centimeters per second has me asking that question constantly. And, well, I guess I'm not immune to comparing great anime to Ghibli either. Shinkai and his collaborators seem to really hit their stride with this movie. The traditional 2D and mixed-use 3D animation in this film is stunning. Whatever Shinkai chooses to animate comes to life. Sometimes that's something exciting like a rocket taking off, and sometimes it's a minute, everyday detail like water stains on a toothbrush holder. The lighting, the texture work, the color, it's mind-boggling. I'm not trying to claim that there aren't moments from his later movies that look nicer with the advantage of new technology, but this level of detail achieved in 2007 is decades ahead of its time. Also, this is the first of Shinkai's movies where I feel like I have to mention the excellent sound design heard throughout. That might be a weird thing to point out for an animated movie, but the hum of electric lights turning on, the creak of a bow, keys falling out of your hands, it's all excellent. Using sound and image, Shinkai captures the time it takes for sakura petals to fall, 5 centimeters per second.
Oh, that's why they...
And he holds you there in this moment of anticipation. If Forgetting to Breathe was a movie, it'd be this one. It's about the time spent alone in transit when you just want to be with the person you love. It's those long spring and summer evenings that never seem to end and are wasted by children waiting to grow older. And at its darkest moments, it's the lost years in your 20s and 30s, where time seems to speed up and slow down on a whim. You can choose to enjoy these small human moments, but if you're not in the right mood to live in them, the movie is probably a bit of a snooze fest. I'm curious to hear how other people felt after watching 5 centimeters per second. Do you remember if you were bored or enthralled? If you write a comment about your experience, I promise I'll read it. I really am curious. I can tell you I'm not entirely sure how I felt about the movie by the time I finished it. A dramatic song plays, the cuts between shots ramp up in speed, and it ends like a lot of Shinkai movies do, with one last burst of emotion that either really hits you or falls flat. For me, this hits and hits hard. When the movie was over, I sat in my room alone. I listened to the piano track accompanying the DVD menu, and I didn't notice how much time was passing until the track repeated 3 times. To me, that was a special moment. It might be a small one, but it's worth paying attention to.
Why did you save me?
Just how solitary human existence is.
I'll repay my debt!
Asuna, tell me why.
So tell me, goddammit! Tell me that little kids should run along to school! Tell me that you hate me! Say it! Come on, listener, say something for a change!
The next pair of films in Makoto Shinkai's collection don't really fit the patterns we've been discussing, and also aren't really a sign of what's to come. First up is 2011's Children Who Chase Lost Voices, which doesn't star a teenager, is more about loss than love, and answers the question, what would actually happen if someone outside of Studio Ghibli tried to make one of their movies? The answer is a film that is charming, sometimes frightening, but ultimately a little lackluster when compared to its clear influences. The second is 2013's The Garden of Words. On paper, this is a lot closer to Shinkai's previous works, but for some reason, it's only around 45 minutes long. With such a short runtime, Garden of Words feels more like an experiment and less like a movie. Some of Shinkai's most interesting camera work appears in this one, and it might still be the prettiest of his movies 9 years later, but I guess achieving this level of high fidelity came at a cost, and that cost was runtime. Both of these movies are interesting, and Lost Voices in particular is maybe the most different of all of Shinkai's works, but it and Garden of Words feel somewhat incomplete. It feels pretty hypocritical to criticize Shinkai for changing things up in a video about how he usually doesn't, but Children Who Chase Lost Voices is an odd duck of a movie, and I can't ignore that. I don't dislike it. In its best moments, it has all of the same impact as the frontrunners for my favorite Makoto Shinkai movies, but I do think Voices fails to fully come together. The movie follows Asuna, a child who has a few mysterious encounters that lead her to wandering into the underground kingdom Agartha, this movie's version of the Land of the Dead. Once there, Asuna travels with her homeroom teacher, Morisaki, through Agartha in search of a way to resurrect Morisaki's wife. Along the way, they encounter strange, dangerous creatures and a society of humans who have become distrustful of topsiders such as themselves. And yeah, Ghibli comparisons are very fitting here, down to the look of our protagonist and the magic stone she carries with her throughout the movie. There's some Castle in the Sky here, a dash of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and a smattering of other similarities that become impossible to ignore if you've seen more than 1 or 2 Ghibli classics. And I'm probably being too harsh. Like with all of Shinkai's movies, a lot of time and energy went into making this film, and the look of Voices is totally different than what has come from him before or since. There's no Tokyo to be found. The hyperrealism of Shinkai's other works is replaced by a more painterly style. Agartha is like stepping into a watercolor painting that has slowly begun to fade and lose its luster. It's still beautiful, but also muddy. A perfect backdrop for analyzing loss. A father since passed, a brother taken, a lover stolen by time. What keeps Voices in the good, not great category for me is that Agartha and the people in it just aren't that interesting. It's a kingdom whose purpose is to guard the land of the dead, but the towns feel like generic D&D starting locations, and the creatures roaming the lands lack that alien, otherworldly feeling that a movie like Princess Mononoke captures very well. It's a bit mean of me to compare any anime movie to one of the greatest of all times, but I think Shinkai has it in him to compete at that level, even if Children Who Chase Lost Voices falls a bit short of what it's trying to achieve. The Garden of Words is Shinkai at his most Shinkai. Romance, drama, a chance meeting, a period of separation, secrets revealed and contended with by the third act, and an emotional song to play us out. It's good, great actually, but it's also really damn short. Garden of Words feels like it could be added as another episode within 5 centimeters per second, with almost no issues. High schooler Akazuki skips school when it's raining to sit in the park and practice making shoes. Here he meets Yukino, an adult woman skipping work to eat chocolate and drink alone. What follows is a more condensed version of Shinkai's usual guy meets and can't be with girl shtick. The source of the conflict in this case being the difference in the two leads' ages, and the fact that Yukino is later revealed to be a teacher on leave at Akizuki's school. Akizuki's reaction to this knowledge being about what you'd expect from a 15-year-old.
I'm a teacher, and you're my student.
Shinkai's setting for this one seems very deliberate. Yes, it is Tokyo again, but it's more specifically Shinjuku Gyoen National Garden, a 144-acre park in the heart of the city. It's a quietly beautiful place nestled in the most densely populated city on Earth, and a few blocks away from the busiest train station in the world. I'm guessing it can be hard to find a quiet moment for yourself living in such a crowded place. So it's no surprise the main characters retreat to this sanctuary to be comfortably alone in each other's company. In Shinkai's movies, a person's life can change from one chance encounter with a stranger. Every small moment shown in this magical place is consequential to the characters, even when the moments themselves seem anything but. It's all very romantic, even if Garden of Words can sometimes feel a bit like a tech demo, with Shinkai emulating real-life film cameras using artificial soft and hard focus. I don't really know if or how Children Who Chase Lost Voices or The Garden of Words fit into the overall story of Makoto Shinkai as a director. I've spent the past 2 months looking through his first 20 years of filmmaking, and at least among this collection, they stand out as odd choices. Not bad choices necessarily, but just different paths Shinkai's career could have taken and may still take down the road. One feels like a departure from his usual subject matter, and the other a strangely short swan song for his more gentle style. I like them both, in particular Garden of Words, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I wanted more out of them, especially knowing that what comes next marks a new era for Makoto Shinkai, the international blockbuster.
It was almost like
seeing something out of a dream. Nothing more or less than a breathtaking view.
We've finally made it to the big one. Your Name is Makoto Shinkai's magnum opus, his money-making machine, and I think after taking my multi-film journey to get to this point, I can safely make the very boring claim that it's probably his best work. While a lot of Shinkai films up until this point have impressed me, I can't say that any are nearly as fun or engaging to watch as Your Name. This movie has to juggle so much, and it does it at such a fast clip that it leaves you just confused enough to want to stay engaged with it. What starts as a very fun, Freaky Friday situation naturally and excitingly changes into a multi-generational mystery disaster movie, bolstered by dramatic and emotional stakes carefully built and paid off throughout the course of the film. Gone are slow train rides and long, winding monologues. This movie does not have time for Shinkai's usual brand of wax poetic, even though it fits in a few great meditative moments here and there. Instead, you are treated to a flurry of different scenes and situations, and tasked with puzzling out what happens in each moment through carefully laid out context. Because of this film's breakneck pace, you have to engage with its world intensely, just like protagonists Taki and Mitsuha must do in order to keep track of evolutions in their own and each other's lives. It's a whole lot of movie to take in on first viewing, but paying close attention can be a rewarding experience, and is especially fun on rewatch. You aren't often immediately told who's in control of whose body at the start of a given scene, especially in the movie's first half, but there are clues and subtle animation differences that teach you to recognize one protagonist from the other. It becomes sort of a fun game, and the movie really tries to trick you by doing things like changing days and who's in control of who from one scene to the next. If you've seen the movie before, and chances are you have, you'll know that this isn't the only trick the movie has up its sleeve. Now that I've watched basically everything Makoto Shinkai has ever directed, my appreciation for Your Name has only grown. It's incredibly satisfying to see Shinkai bring all of his talents together under one film. His previous movies often had big, fantastical ideas, but they weren't always executed well. And his more emotionally affecting movies were often so character-driven that they didn't have room for much in terms of plot or action. Your Name is the best of both worlds. A movie starring characters you quickly learn to love, and a few emotional bombs carefully planted throughout to blow up in your face and ultimately leave you crying over a random set of stairs. This movie is a shining example that Makoto Shinkai still has it in him to do so much with just another love story. And that really gives me hope for Suzume and whatever comes after that. Your Name is great, I love it, and I was shocked to discover Makoto Shinkai doesn't. I know! I was surprised too. In an interview from the year the movie released, Shinkai was quoted saying he was not happy with how Your Name turned out, or how its success has continued to stir up comparisons between him and Miyazaki. In the article from the Japan Times, which ironically does that very thing, Shinkai said he considers the movie unbalanced and even unfinished. A claim I find so interesting, I feel like I could dedicate another entire video to dissecting it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm sorry if you were looking for conclusions, I don't have any for you today other than maybe this. Makoto Shinkai is a rare, enduring talent in an industry that chews and spits out its shining stars. Having seen pretty much everything he's ever touched, I feel a connection to his work that goes beyond liking his biggest movies and pointing out surface-level comparisons shared amongst the rest. I think all of the films talked about today are strong enough to stand on their own and be someone's favorite of his work. There's the space one, and the one with the train, and the one with the rain, and I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Hello? Is anybody here?
Yeah, I guess it's okay. You know, for another love story. All kidding aside, I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about Weathering with You, and I also don't know how Suzume will shake out. But I want to sit with some of the ideas I've been laying out in this video for a bit longer before placing any bets. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm chopping the video off here, for now, with a promise that I'll get around to making a part 2 somewhere down the line. This was always going to be too big of a topic for me to tackle all at once. And if Makoto Shinkai considers a movie as good as Your Name to be unfinished, then I guess I can live with not finishing my own silly little retrospective on the guy in one shot. I hope that's okay with you, person watching this, because I don't want to disappoint any of you. Working on this channel, seeing it grow, and reading feedback from you all has really made my year. Tracking shots continues to be a fun experiment for me, and I already can't wait to start working on my next video. If you've liked what you've watched so far, please consider subscribing and doing all the other YouTube things. Either way, I hope you have a great new year. We'll talk again soon.